Welcome back to the Daily Poem here on the Close Reads Podcast Network. I'm David Kern. Today's poem is by Donald Justice. He was born on August 12th, 1925, and that makes today his birthday. He was an American poet who won the Pulitzer Prize for Poetry in 1980. He also received the Lannan Literary Award for Poetry in 1996 and several other awards. He was a grant winner from the Guggenheim Foundation, the Rockefeller Foundation, and the National Endowment for the Arts. He died in 2004 at the age of 78. The poem that I'm going to read today is called There is a Gold Light in Certain Old Paintings. It goes like this. There is a gold light in certain old paintings that represents a diffusion of sunlight. It is like happiness when we are happy. It comes from everywhere and from nowhere at once, this light, and the poor soldiers sprawled at the foot of the cross share in its charity equally with the cross. 2. Orpheus hesitated beside the Black River. With so much to look forward to, he looked back. We think he sang then, but the song is lost. At least he had seen once more the beloved back. I say the song went this way. Oh, prolong now the sorrow if that is all there is to prolong. 3. The world is very dusty, uncle. Let us work. One day the sickness shall pass from the earth for good. The orchard will bloom. Someone will play the guitar. Our work will be seen as strong and clean and good. And all that we suffered through having existed shall be forgotten as though it had never existed. My comments on this poem today are going to come by way of one of my favorite nonfiction storytellers, John Jeremiah Sullivan, whose book Pulphead is a book of essays that is among my favorite books of nonfiction written in the last decade or so. And he describes in an article for the Paris Review a trip to North Carolina where he met with the renowned novelist Dennis Johnson. And I want to read a little bit of a selection from this article in the Paris Review, because it gets into this poem. It's for a feature, or a series anyway, called The Poem Stuck in My Head. And John Jeremiah Sullivan writes this. It emerged that Johnson had been fascinated by Venus flytraps since childhood, and Wilmington, North Carolina, happens to be the one place in the world where these strange carnivorous creatures grow wild, or at least where they're truly native. The nutrient-starved coastal soil made them turn to insects for food. We took him to an actual flytrap preserve behind an elementary school where you walked on narrow paths through bright green clusters of the plant. You could bend down with a pencil and touch their little hairs, causing them to snap shut. The speed of it made us jump back. We touched only a couple, though, because once an individual trap is clamped down, it can never open again. The point is, after this excursion, we went to a barbecue joint downtown called Parchie's. In the Cape Fear country and throughout the Piedmont of the state, we have this unusual kind of barbecue, which uses a light vinegar sauce instead of the red stuff and tastes totally different than what you expect if you grew up west of here. Strangest of all, it's served with the coleslaw on the sandwich, right on top of the barbecue. Sounds vile, but when you eat it with a side of finger-shaped hush puppies, you feel that the coronary episode this meal will trigger at some unknown moment down the road makes for an even trade. Johnson grew visibly excited waiting for the food. He told us that he had some roots in Carolina and that once, when he was very young, his grandparents had taken him to a barbecue place somewhere in the country and brought him a sandwich. He'd never gotten over the memory of this sandwich. It was perfect. In his mind, it had become the sandwich. Every barbecue sandwich after it, even the good ones, had been, on some level, a mockery. Hey, my friend Ben said, what if this is the one? What if you've been remembering this Piedmont style all these years and now you're about to re-experience it? Is that a good thing? Enter expectation, pressure. The sandwiches came. He lifted his and bit into it. The thing that happened to his face, I won't soon forget. It was like childlike joy mixed with grown-up satisfaction, mixed with the suppression of laughter. It was deep. I consider it to have been one of the great moments in Piedmont-style barbecue history. As we chatted afterward in The Glow, it came up that in Dennis's studio out in Idaho, he has a plaque on a wall that reads, "The world is very dusty, uncle. Let us work." This happens to be a line from a Donald Justice poem I've never been able to get out of my head, and I've never wanted to. It comes to me on walks or when lying awake, also for no reason. Reciting the lines, I re-enter the brief time I knew Justice during a summer spent tending bar at the Sewanee Writers Conference in the mid-90s. Justice was staying upstairs in the house where the bar was. He had a little ritual. Every night at about 10, when the rest of the writers were gearing up for some ego jousting, Justice would come down quietly in his Mr. Rogers sweater and ask for a glass of milk, which we kept on hand for White Russians. He would take a couple of sips, say something pleasant, and slip back upstairs to work on a poem. There was something eloquent in the gesture, and yet in the way he lingered, you sensed that he wished he could stay. It was easy to see why the one DJ's work had appealing to the other. The poem is a masterpiece of late 20th century American verse, written in a curious nonce form that looks for rhyme and repetition. Justice experimented until the very end. It sings of regret and is a rejection of regret, and is finally about the inseparable sweetness and pain of human life. The poem's classical, not near-classical or pseudo-classical, but somehow and in defiance of time, truly classical lyrical elegance is, I like to imagine, what Justice was working toward upstairs at the wooden desk with the empty glass in front of him. End quote. I just love those reflections from John Jeremiah Sullivan. I love having a poetry tied to a story like that. So I wanted to share that with you as the comments today, especially on Donald Justice's birthday. So once again, here is, there is a gold light in certain old paintings. 1. There is a gold light in certain old paintings that represents a diffusion of sunlight. It's like happiness when we are happy. It comes from everywhere and from nowhere at once, this light. And the poor soldiers sprawled at the foot of the cross share in its charity equally with the cross. 2. Orpheus hesitated beside the Black River. With so much to look forward to, he looked back. We think he sang then, but the song is lost. At least he had seen once more the beloved back. I say the song went this way. Oh, prolong now the sorrow, if that is all there is to prolong. 3. The world is very dusty, uncle. Let us work. One day the sickness shall pass from the earth for good. The orchard will bloom. Someone will play the guitar. Our work will be seen as strong and clean and good. And all that we suffered through having existed shall be forgotten as though it had never existed. This has been the Daily Poem. Thanks so much for listening. I'll be back tomorrow with another poem for you.